The night air on County Road 9 was colder than it should have been for October. A kind of cold that slides under a jacket and stays there, while a thin mist rose from the river and wrapped the narrow two-lane bridge like a gray scarf. At 2:14 a.m., a long-haul trucker named Carl Benton eased off the gas when he saw an SUV sitting crooked at the center, lying with its hazard lights blinking in a slow orange heartbeat. He rolled closer, tapped his horn once, then again, and nothing moved. The driver's door hung open. The interior dome light glowed a tired yellow, and a thermos sat in the cup holder with a thin wisp of steam curling up like a question. Carl killed his engine, climbed down, and called out, "Hello? You okay?" His voice sounded small against the water and the dark woods. He walked a slow circle around the SUV, a green '98 Explorer with a county parking sticker on the rear window and a dent on the passenger side that looked old. He saw a teenager's backpack on the back seat, blue nylon, ranger's patch, one frayed strap, and on the front passenger floor, a baseball cap and a folded county map with creases worn deep from use. There were no keys on the ground. No glass, no skid marks. No blood. The seatbelt on the driver's side was stretched out like someone had left in a hurry and let it snap back. Carl felt the prickly feeling that says get back in the truck, lock the doors, keep going. But he made the call anyway, because that's what you do on a lonely road with no one else around. The dispatcher's voice was calm. Units en route. Carl waited with his hazard lights on behind the SUV, staring at the black water that slid under the bridge and carried the mist downstream. In the distance, a dog barked twice, then went quiet. 15 minutes later, he saw the blue-white strobe in his mirrors, and a county cruiser rolled up, followed by a second car, and then a boxy rescue truck with dull stripes. Deputy Harkness stepped out first, big coat over an undersized uniform, flashlight already in hand. "Who called it in?" he asked without looking up. "Me," Carl said, pointing at the open door. No one answered. Harkness leaned into the SUV, sniffed, then tapped the thermos with a knuckle. Still warm. He lifted it, unscrewed the cap, and poured a little out onto the asphalt. Steam rose and then vanished. Deputy Ruiz walked the rails of the bridge with his light close to the metal, sweeping the river line, pausing where the guardrail bolts were rusty and sagging, then moving on. A volunteer in a reflective vest set out 2 flares, and they hissed red at the edges of the scene. The sheriff himself arrived 10 minutes later in a tan coat and a hat that had seen too many winters. Sheriff Dobson had the kind of face that doesn't give much away, but he put a hand on the roof of the SUV and kept it there longer than he needed to, like he was trying to feel what had happened through the metal. "Run the plate," he said. "See who we've got." Ruiz called it in. The return came back clean, registered to Mark Delaney. Age 42, local address in town, widowed. One dependent, Ethan Delaney, age 14. Father and son, Dobson said, more to himself than anyone. He checked the rear cargo area. A soft-sided cooler with 2 water bottles, a rolled sleeping bag, a small tackle box, and a plastic bag with snacks from the gas station at the highway exit. Receipts on top said 1:38 a.m. Not long ago, Ruiz said. Harkness pointed at the shoulder, where the gravel thinned near the end of the bridge. Footprints. In the flare light, they looked faint and messy, like 2 sets of shoes stepping off the asphalt and onto the dust, one larger, one smaller, both heading toward the river's edge, then turning back, then stopping. They followed the marks to where the brush thickened, but the earth there was hard, and the prints died. On the river below, the mist moved like breath. The rescue truck crew lowered a spotlight, and the water lit up in a dirty cone that showed nothing but a floating log and a piece of white foam caught on a branch. "We need dogs," Dobson said. and we need them now." By 3 o'clock, the bridge was shut down to traffic. A K9 unit arrived with a German shepherd named Bruno, who sniffed the driver's seat, the door, the air near the thermos, then pulled hard toward the north end of the bridge. Bruno tracked to the gravel turnout and into the scrub line, circled, whined, and looked back, confused by the wind. The handler shook his head. Scents thin. Divers came at dawn, shoulders hunched against the cold black suits shining under sodium lights. They slid into the river without talking and disappeared into a mouth of dark water that looked slower than it really was. On the bank, volunteers formed search lines and pushed through brush with sticks, calling names that had not yet become headlines. "Mark, Ethan." The sound of it felt wrong in the pale morning, like calling into a church after the service is over. Reporters arrived by 8, sleepy eyes, hot coffee, chapped hands. They took photos of the SUV on a flatbed, of Sheriff Dobson talking without saying much, of the mist that burned away as the sun finally showed itself. In town, the story moved faster than people. At the diner, Joyce the waitress turned the small TV up as high as it would go and refilled cups without asking. At the high school, a vice principal pulled the freshman baseball team out of homeroom and told them to call home if they needed to. In the neighborhood where the Delaney's lived, a porch light stayed on in daylight, and a woman across the street stood with her, coat over her nightgown, and didn't go back inside. By noon, Dobson had the basics. Mark ran a small dental practice on Maple, closed on Fridays. Ethan was a quiet kid who liked baseball cards and kept his hat crooked to the side even when his aunt told him not to. The mom, Ellen, had died 2 years earlier after a long illness, and neighbors said Mark had handled it with more grace than most. The last phone call on Mark's cell, now bagged in evidence from the center console, was to his sister at 1:22 a.m., voicemail only, 32 seconds of road noise, and a single word at the end that no one could make out. The divers surfaced after the first sweep, shaking their heads, teeth tapping from cold. "Nothing," the lead said. "We'll go again." They went again. And again. The afternoon stretched, and the bridge felt smaller with every hour, like the road had pulled up a little, shrunk away from the river, ashamed. Rumors started in the gaps where facts should be. Someone in a camo jacket at the gas station swore he saw 2 figures walking the shoulder around midnight. A trucker said a second car had idled on the far end of the bridge with its lights off, then rolled away slow when he came around the bend. A kid with a scanner said the county radios had buzzed for a few minutes and then gone silent, which meant they knew more than they were saying. In the sheriff's office conference room, a whiteboard went up with black letters. Timeline: 1:38 a.m. gas station receipt, 2:14 a.m. SUV scene, 2:29 a.m. caller contacts dispatch, 2:45 a.m. first unit on scene. Underneath, a list: thermos warm, backpack, cap, map, nitrogen monoxide keys found outside, 2 sets of prints at 6:10 p.m. As the light thinned and the air turned sharp again, Dobson stood alone on the bridge and looked down at the place where the water curved out of sight. He thought of the dome light still glowing when they arrived, the way it had made a small circle of safety inside the SUV, while the rest of the world stayed dark. He thought of a man who had driven out here with his boy, for reasons no one understood, and then stepped away from the vehicle as if pulled by a rope only he could see. He thought of the way the prince had stopped at the brush, and of Bruno whining at the turn. He told the deputies to pack it in for the night and post a car at each end. He told the volunteers to go home and try to sleep, though he knew most wouldn't. He told the press there was no sign of foul play yet, then went back to his office and stared at the voicemail until the sound of wind over the microphone stopped meaning anything. By midnight, the bridge was empty again, except for the guardrails and the fog and the quiet river moving under everything. In town, porch lights still burned. In a bedroom with a baseball poster on the wall, a window stayed open half an inch like it was waiting for air that never came. And somewhere in the dark, beyond the reach of the last street lamp, a shape moved through trees and left no print at all. Detective Riley Coates leaned against the hood of her car, the morning sun catching in her hair as she studied the cracked asphalt of County Road 9. 25 years had passed since the Delaney SUV was found on the bridge. Door open, engine running, hazard lights blinking in the fog. 25 years since a father and his teenage son had walked away from that vehicle and never returned. And now, here she was, the new lead investigator for cold cases, staring at the same bridge she'd read about in files since she joined the department. Behind her, traffic cones diverted drivers to a temporary lane while a county construction crew shoveled through river silt under the bridge. The crew had been clearing debris for a new support beam when one of them struck something soft wrapped in fabric. They called it in, and the evidence techs spent the rest of the day pulling a weather-worn jacket from the mud, its denim fibers rotten, but one pocket still holding a wallet pressed flat from years underground. Inside were waterlogged cards and a driver's license, just enough left to match to Mark Delaney. Riley pulled the crime scene photos from her folder again. The jacket looked like something a man would throw on for a midnight drive in late fall. The stain near the shoulder had tested positive for human blood. The wallet, though battered, confirmed this wasn't a random piece of lost clothing. It was his, and it had been buried deep, not carried downstream, which meant someone had placed it there. Sheriff Dobson's successor, a graying man named Sheriff Kincaid, met Riley at the site that morning. His voice was rough from years of coffee and cigarettes. "You know what this means?" he asked, squinting at the water. Riley nodded. The father didn't just vanish. He bled, and someone wanted it hidden. The forensics team brought in the results 2 days later. The blood on the denim matched Mark Delaney, but there was no trace of Ethan. No hair, no bone, no fibers from a second person. Just the father's DNA, locked in fabric that had been sealed away by time and silt. Riley stared at the report in her office, a bitter taste filling her mouth. "One piece of the puzzle," she whispered. "But where's the rest?" She taped the photo of the jacket to the evidence board, next to the decades-old pictures of the SUV on the bridge. She connected them with red string, a line running from the open door to the riverbank where the jacket was found. She pinned up the family photos Mark, with his arm around his son Ethan, both smiling at a little league game, baseball caps tilted sideways, the mom already gone by then. Beneath that, she tacked the school photo of Ethan from 1999, his awkward teenage grin frozen in time. He should have been 39 now. A grown man. Maybe alive. Maybe not. When Riley visited the morgue, the medical examiner handed her a bagged object pulled from the jacket pocket. A rusted house key, the kind with a plastic cap that had long since cracked away. "Doesn't match the locks at their old home," the examiner said. "Could be for a cabin, a storage unit, who knows?" But it was important enough that he carried it. That night, Riley drove out to the Delaney home, now owned by another family. She parked across the street and stared at the modest 2-story house. Kids' bikes leaned against the porch railing, their handlebars glittering in the porch light. Curtains glowed warm, but Riley's eyes lingered on the upstairs window, the one that had been Ethan's room. She imagined him there in 1999, flipping through baseball cards, stuffing his backpack for the weekend with his dad. She wondered if he had looked out the glass that last night and thought the world was still safe. The next morning, Riley sat in the records room at the precinct, surrounded by dusty boxes. She pulled the Delaney file apart, piece by piece. Old reports spoke of rumors, whispers of a second car at the bridge that night. A trucker who swore he saw headlights blink once in the trees. A waitress who thought she saw Mark arguing with someone a week before he vanished. Nothing that held weight back then. But now, with a jacket pulled from the mud, every rumor felt sharp again. At noon, Riley got a call from her partner, Detective Sam Keller. "Meet me at the old diner," he said. His voice was flat. "You'll want to hear this." The diner hadn't changed much since the late 90s. The same neon coffee cup flickered in the window. The same red vinyl booths cracked at the edges. Riley slid into a booth across from Keller, who pushed a manila envelope toward her. Construction crew found something else while digging near the riverbank. Didn't put it on the report yet. They wanted us to see first. Riley pulled out the contents carefully. Inside was a faded Polaroid, colors washed pale. A boy, maybe 14, stood on a dirt road with trees pressing close behind him. His hair was messy, his eyes uncertain. In his hand was a baseball cap. The corner of the photo was bent. A date scribbled on the bottom, October 16th, 1999, 3 days after the disappearance. Her chest tightened. "That's Ethan," Keller nodded. It was stuck between boards near the bank. Like someone left it there. Riley stared at the photo until her throat ached. If it was real, it meant Ethan had survived at least days after his father's jacket was buried. It meant he had been alive, scared, waiting. That night, Riley spread the evidence across her desk under the dim yellow light. Jacket, wallet, key, Polaroid. She wrote a single word in the center of the board, WHY. Why leave the SUV staged on the bridge? Why hide the father's jacket in the mud? Why let the boy live long enough to be photographed, then erase him? Her phone buzzed. A restricted number flashed on the screen. Riley hesitated, then answered. A man's voice came through, low and gravelly. "Stop searching the river." Riley froze. "Who is this?" "You won't find the boy there," the voice said. "You never would." The line clicked dead. Riley sat in silence, the phone heavy in her hand, the sound of her own breathing loud in the room. She looked at the Polaroid again, the boy's eyes caught forever on film, wide and unsettled. Whoever had called knew about him, knew more than anyone had told in 25 years. She pinned the Polaroid to the board and drew a circle around it. For the first time since she opened the case, she felt the truth shift. This wasn't just about a man and his son disappearing on a foggy night. It was about someone who had been hiding in the dark all along, waiting for someone like her to start asking again. The jacket proved Mark was dead, but the photo proved Ethan wasn't. And Riley swore to herself, in that quiet office with the board staring back at her, that she would find out why a boy had been taken, and why someone had waited all these years to whisper the truth into the phone. The rain came down steady the next morning, tapping against the windows of the precinct, as Detective Riley Coates spread the Delaney files across the evidence room table. The Polaroid of Ethan, dated 3 days after the disappearance, lay at the center. She had stared at it so long that she could trace the lines of his worried face with her eyes closed. His hair stuck up like he'd been running his hands through it, his clothes rumpled, his sneakers muddy. Whoever had taken the picture hadn't bothered to stage it. It was raw, quick, almost like proof of life. Riley picked up the photo, held it close, and whispered, "Where did you go after this?" Her partner, Sam Keller, pushed through the door with 2 steaming coffees. He dropped one beside her and nodded at the Polaroid. "Still thinking about it?" he asked. "Still," she replied, her voice low. "This changes everything. For years, everyone assumed father and son went into the river together. But this proves Ethan didn't." Sam leaned over, studying the boy's face again. "And that voice on the phone last night, he knew exactly what to say to hook you. He said Ethan wasn't in the river. He was right. Riley rubbed her forehead. This wasn't random. Someone wanted Mark gone, and someone kept Ethan. The question is who and why. They pulled the phone logs from the night before, tracing restricted numbers with the help of the telecom office. Nothing solid. The call had been routed through a maze of prepaid lines and dead ends. Whoever was behind it knew how to stay hidden by mid-morning. They were on the road, driving toward the library in Ridgetop, the small town where the Delaney's had lived. Riley had arranged to meet Corinne Willis, a classmate of Ethan's from 1999. She was now 38, a school counselor with a reputation for being thoughtful, steady, and not prone to exaggeration. They found her in the children's section, surrounded by bright posters and tiny chairs. Corinne tucked her hair behind her ear as Riley showed her the Polaroid. She went pale. "That's him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's Ethan. I hadn't seen that face in 25 years, but I'd know him anywhere. Did he ever say anything strange before he disappeared?" Riley asked. Corinne nodded slowly. "The week before. He was different. He told me he thought someone was following him. I thought he was just being dramatic. But he was serious. He said, 'Do you ever feel like someone's watching you, waiting for you to mess up?' I laughed it off. But now," she shook her head, "now I wish I'd believed him." Outside the library, the rain had slowed to a mist. Sam lit a cigarette under the awning, though he never smoked more than 2 drags before tossing it. "So the kid was spooked before it even happened," he said. "That means whoever grabbed them was circling for days, maybe weeks." Riley frowned. And Ethan felt it. Kids know when something's wrong, even if they can't put it into words. Their next stop was the sheriff's archive building. Dust hung in the air as they pulled out the brittle boxes of old reports. Riley flipped through call logs from October 1999. Her eyes caught on a line dated October 17th, the night after the SUV was found. Anonymous male caller. Stated, "Don't bother with the river." Hung up. Riley's hand tightened on the paper. "Sam, look at this." He read it and raised his brows. Same words. 25 years apart. "Same man," Riley said, her voice flat. "Has to be." They sat in silence, staring at the old paper until the weight of it sank in. Someone had been watching from the start, taunting, making sure the trail stayed cold. And now, for some reason, he wanted it reopened. That evening, Riley drove out alone to the bridge. The water below looked calm, but she knew its currents hid sudden drop-offs and caves that swallowed things whole. The flares and search teams from years ago were long gone, but the silence still clung. She leaned against the rusted guardrail and closed her eyes, listening to the river's low roar. Her phone buzzed. A new text. "You're looking in the wrong place. The boy isn't lost. He's kept." Riley's stomach dropped. She spun, scanning the tree line. The mist shifted. Branches moved with the breeze, but no figure showed itself. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Back at the precinct, she printed the message and tacked it to the evidence board next to the Polaroid. Sam stared at the words, jaw tight. "Kept," he muttered. "That's not the word you use if someone's dead. That's the word you use if someone's a possession. Or a prisoner," Riley said. They worked late into the night, tracing old interviews. Teachers had said Ethan seemed distracted that final week, checking the windows, jumping at sudden noises. Neighbors remembered Mark Delaney, pacing the yard late at night, phone in hand, voice tense. No one thought much of it at the time. Riley flicked through the notes until she found one that made her stop cold. A waitress from the diner had said she saw Mark in an argument with a man a week before the disappearance. The man's name, Harold Fenwick, Mark's former business partner at the dental office. Riley circled the name in red ink. "Still alive?" Sam asked, still practicing, 2 towns over, Riley said. Sam leaned back. So let's pay him a visit. But before they could plan it, Riley's phone rang. An unknown number again. She answered, her voice tight. Detective Coates. A low chuckle came through. Then the same gravelly voice. You're close. Too close. The line went dead. For a moment, Riley stood frozen, phone pressed to her ear, listening to the empty static. Then she turned slowly toward the window. Across the street, under a flickering street lamp, a dark sedan idled with its headlights off. As she watched, the lights flicked on, and the car rolled away into the night. Her reflection in the glass looked pale, haunted. For the first time since reopening the case, Riley felt not like an investigator chasing ghosts, but like prey being led into a trap. She sat down hard at her desk, staring at the Polaroid, the text, the voicemail trapped. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was one she didn't like. Ethan Delaney hadn't been lost to the river. He had been taken, and whoever had kept him might still be out there. Riley pressed her palms flat on the desk and whispered, "Then I'm coming for you." And somewhere in the darkness beyond the precinct walls, someone smiled. Detective Riley Coates sat at her desk long after the rest of the precinct had gone quiet. The hum of the vending machine down the hall and the ticking of the old clock on the wall were the only sounds. In front of her, the board had grown dense. The Polaroid of Ethan, the denim jacket pulled from the mud, the typed reports from 1999, and the newest text message that read in shaky letters, "The boy isn't lost. He's kept." Red string-connected details, but the pattern still felt like smoke slipping through her fingers. She picked up the Polaroid again, running her thumb across the boy's face. Ethan's eyes seemed alive, wide and unsettled, as if he'd just heard something in the woods. It wasn't the look of a kid who had already lost hope. It was the look of a kid who knew he was being watched. Riley whispered under her breath, "What did you see that night?" The next morning, Riley and her partner Sam Keller drove to the neighboring town to meet Harold Fenwick, Mark Delaney's old business partner. His office sat in a single-story brick building with a peeling sign that read Fenwick Family Dentistry. Inside, the place smelled faintly of antiseptic and old carpet. The receptionist, a woman with horn-rimmed glasses, ushered them into a back office. Fenwick was in his late 60s now, his hair white and thinning, but his posture was still solid. He adjusted his glasses as Riley introduced herself and explained the case had been reopened. "I knew this day might come," he said quietly. "Mark's disappearance never sat right." "You were his partner," Riley said, flipping open her notebook. "You knew him well." "We started that practice together," Fenwick said, leaning back. "Mark was a better dentist than me, if I'm honest. Patients loved him. He had a way of making people feel seen. I respected that." Riley glanced at her notes. "The file shows you were under investigation for insurance irregularities in 1999. Mark had threatened to report you." Fenwick's mouth tightened. "That was a long time ago, and I was cleared. Nothing stuck. Did you argue with him?" Sam pressed. "Of course we argued. He wanted everything clean, perfect. I cut corners. It happens in small-town practices. But kill him?" Fenwick shook his head. "Never. I liked that boy of his. Gave him extra toothbrush kits whenever he came in." Riley watched Fenwick's face carefully. His words were steady, but his eyes betrayed unease. "Where were you the night Mark and Ethan disappeared?" She asked. "At home. My wife was alive then. She could vouch, though she's gone now. Staff from the office can tell you too. I wasn't at that bridge, Detective. I wanted to protect my career, not ruin it forever." Outside in the car, Sam drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. "He's hiding something. Not necessarily murder," Riley said, "but something They drove back into Ridgetop, the small town where the Delaney's had lived. Brick storefronts lined Main Street, most of them faded, a few boarded up. Riley slowed near the diner where the waitress Joyce had worked for decades. Inside, the neon sign flickered as they slid into a booth. Joyce approached with her order pad, her eyes tired. "Detectives," she said flatly. "You're not hard to spot. This case has everyone whispering again." "You worked here in '99? Riley asked. "30 years I've worked here," Joyce said. "Saw it all. Did you ever see Mark here?" Riley asked carefully. Joyce's gaze flickered. "Plenty, but not with his son. With women." Thought he was being discreet, but this town's small. People noticed. Riley leaned in. "Which women?" Joyce hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Melanie Carter, Caroline Hughes, maybe others." They'd sit in the corner booth, thinking no one was watching. "But I saw, and so did their husbands." Sam asked, "Did anyone ever confront him?" Joyce's eyes slid toward the counter, where a broad-shouldered man in greasy coveralls ate with his head down. "Caroline Hughes's ex-husband," she whispered. "Donnie. He used to come in red in the face, swearing he'd kill Mark if he ever caught him with his wife. People thought it was just talk, but..." She shrugged. When Donnie left the diner, Riley and Sam followed him into the parking lot. His truck sat under a flickering streetlight, an old green Ford with rust along the fender. Riley's chest tightened, the same detail. Melanie Carter had mentioned about a man who'd watched her apartment in 1999. "Mr. Hughes," Sam called, flashing his badge. "We'd like to ask you a few questions." Donnie froze, his hand on the door handle. His eyes narrowed. "This about Delaney?" "Yes," Riley said evenly. "We know you had words with him." Donnie's jaw clenched. "Everyone knew. He didn't hide it well. He was with my wife." He smiled while he took from people. "You think I didn't want him dead? I wanted to put him in the ground. But when he vanished, I was at work. Overnight shift at the mill. Plenty of witnesses. Convenient alibi," Sam muttered. "Convenient or not, it's the truth," Donnie snapped. He climbed into his truck and started the engine. Before pulling away, he leaned out the window, his voice low. "If someone killed him, it wasn't over money. It was over shame. Mark made enemies, and enemies don't forget." As the truck rumbled away, Riley stared at the rusted fender. "He's lying about something," she murmured. "Maybe not about the killing," Sam said. "But he knows more than he's saying." That night, back at the precinct, Riley flipped through more of the old files. Her pen stopped on a brittle slip of paper, postmarked a week after the disappearance. The anonymous letter read, "Check closer to home. The boy isn't lost. He's kept." Her stomach tightened. The handwriting was shaky, but deliberate, almost like someone trying to disguise it. She pinned the letter next to the text message she'd received just days ago. Same phrasing. Same warning dot. As she stared at the board, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Riley answered. Heart-pounding silence. Just breathing. Then the same gravelly voice. "You're getting warmer. The boy is closer than you think." The line went dead. Riley stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, her reflection pale in the darkened window. She turned slowly, every hair on her neck rising. On her desk, under the lamp, lay something new. A Polaroid face down. She picked it up with shaking hands. It showed the bridge, empty under fog, the SUV's door open, just as it had been in 1999. But the photo edges were curled, the colors faded. On the back, written in jagged pen, "I was here." Her pulse hammered in her throat. Whoever had been playing games wasn't just telling her the story. They were feeding her pieces of it, pulling her deeper, step by step. And Riley realized with a chill that someone wanted her to see what really happened that October night, not in reports or rumors, but through their eyes. The jacket had proved Mark was dead. The Polaroid proved Ethan lived past the bridge. And now the message made it clear. Whoever had him wanted the story told. Riley pinned the new Polaroid to the board, stepped back and whispered, "Then show me the rest." The next morning, the sky over Ridgetop was the color of wet slate, and Detective Riley Coates felt the same way as she parked outside the county library's basement archive. She and Sam signed the log, took the key to the microfilm room, and fed old reels through a machine that squealed like it hated being woken up. They searched the local paper from October 1999 line by line until Riley froze on a small item near the classifieds. Several callers had reported a boy in pajamas walking near County Road 9 3 nights after the SUV was found. Deputies had brushed it off as rumor. Riley printed the column, circled the line, and said they thought he was a ghost because it was easier than believing they missed him. Sam rubbed his jaw. If he was on foot, he went somewhere close. Not home, not school. Where do you hide a kid a mile from the bridge? Riley tapped a faded map of the area on the wall. A quarry sat north of the river, long abandoned even in '99, with a caretaker's shack on the ledger. The name beside it read, Owen Pike. They drove out before lunch. The quarry was a bowl of dark water and broken rock, fenced with rust and bad memories. A chain hung loose at the gate. Pine needles carpeted the road. The caretaker's shack, half sunk on one side, leaned into the trees like it wanted to disappear. Riley pushed the door with her knuckles. It groaned open into a stale room that smelled like wet wood and mice. Sun knifed through a broken window and lit a small corner where a kid might hide. Sam swept the floor with his flashlight. "Got something," he said. In the dust under a toppled chair sat a single sneaker, small, blue. The side still held the ragged sticker of a baseball player. Riley slid on gloves, lifted it, and swallowed. The rubber had cracked from years of heat and cold, but the laces were double-knotted like a careful dad might tie them. "Ethan loved baseball," she said. His classmate wrote that on his yearbook line. Sam nodded at the window frame. "Look here." Someone had scratched tallies into soft wood, groups of 5, then a gap, then more. Low on the wall, where a kid's hand would reach. Riley photographed everything, then stepped outside to breathe air that didn't taste like dust and remembering. On the shack's door jamb, another word had been carved. Want. The rest of the phrase was splintered away. She stared until her eyes burned. Past Want, the trees ran toward a ravine. A narrow footpath headed down like a line, drawn by a scared hand over and over. They followed it 20 yards, then 30, until it hit an old culvert. Inside the mouth of the concrete pipe, someone had chalked 2 stick figures, one tall, one small. The small one had a baseball cap. He was here, Riley said, long enough to mark the place his own. Back at the precinct, the lab took the shoe, the wood scrap, a flake of chalk. Results would take time, but Riley didn't wait to push the next lead. They found Owen Pike's name in a tax record and in an old church directory. The pastor, a soft-spoken man with tired eyes, remembered him right away. Came alone most Sundays, he said. Once brought a boy. Summer of maybe. Sat in the back pew, wouldn't look up. Owen didn't introduce him. I assumed nephew, but the boy was anxious. Like a stray that wanted to bolt. Riley felt the floor tilt. How did Owen act? Proud, the pastor said, and then his voice went smaller. Protective. Possessive. Pike had died in 2003, a stroke at his kitchen table. No children. No will. His estate, such as it was, had gone to back taxes. His name had never made it into the Delaney file. On the drive back, Riley's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Stop asking about Pike. Look closer to the water. She showed Sam. Someone doesn't want Pike in this, he said. Which means he belongs. They turned around and headed not for home, but back to the river, parking where the bridge shadow crossed the bank. The water ran brown and fast. On the north side, half buried in leaves, they found a little clearing with a view of the old service road that skirted the quarry fence. Beer cans, a melted candle, and under a flat rock, a plastic sandwich bag with a folded paper inside. Riley opened it with tweezers. Child's handwriting, crooked letters, blue ink. Day 2 hungry. Day 3 he says Mom forgot. Day 10 stay low in cars. Day 11 don't cry. The page smelled like damp and years. Riley's chest ached. She pressed her thumb against the photo of the Polaroid on her phone. Sane boy. Sane small block letters as if the hand had taught itself to write in hiding. He kept time alone, she said. He built a calendar out of pain. They logged the find and pushed for the old tip lines again. One name jumped that no one had ever called back. Clyde Harper, a retired truck driver who had claimed he saw a kid in pajamas near the service road the week after the bridge. Clyde lived in a farmhouse with a sagging porch and a dog that lifted its head, looked them over, and went back to sleep. Clyde breathed from a small oxygen tank and told the story the same way he had written it. Just after dusk, a skinny kid cut across my headlights and ran for the trees like the road was lava. Blue flannel pants, no shoes. I slowed to ask if he needed help. He looked at me like I was fire and vanished. Did you tell anyone then? Riley asked. Sheriff, he said. They said I saw grief. Yours, theirs, everybody's. Clyde's eyes went wet and angry. No, ma'am. I saw a boy who was alive and scared. 15 minutes after they left Clyde's place, Riley's phone lit again. A photo came through a grainy shot of the back of their unmarked car, clearly taken from a ditch as they pulled away. The text under it said, "You see what you want. He sees everything." Sam's mouth was a hard line. He's on us, Riley typed back to the number, hands steady even as her pulse kicked. Meet me. Name the place. No reply came. The number went dead. That night, Riley sat at her kitchen table with the quarry map, the bridge photos, the shoe print measurements, and the journal page. The apartment was quiet, except for the fridge buzz and the occasional car passing below. She tried to picture a route a boy would take from the bridge to the quarry in the dark. Which trees did he cling to? Where did he hide when headlights swept the road? Which dog barked and who never came to their door to check? Her eyes drifted shut for a blink that turned too long, and when she opened them, a shadow shifted on the glass balcony door. She stood fast, one hand to her holster, and stepped closer. The smudge on the outside wasn't a person. It was chalk. 3 symbols, small, quick, a code scrawled at knee height, a baseball diamond, an arrow, and a door. In the morning light, they were barely there, already fading. Riley took photos through the glass, then opened the door and looked down at the concrete. A tiny square of paper lay under the railing. She picked it up with tweezers. Day 12, he says be quiet. Day 13 chalk helps. Day 14 bases equals safe. She closed her eyes. He came here, she said. Sam arrived in 10 minutes, hair messy, jacket half zipped. He studied the chalk marks, then the paper. Either Ethan just stood on your balcony, he said, or someone wants you to think that. Riley stared out over the street. If he was taught the world is a trap, he learned to leave signs only he understands. Bases are safe. Arrows point to doors. She jabbed a finger at the city map. What looks like a baseball diamond from above? Sam shrugged. Ball field? Schoolyard? Riley's finger landed on an old park's map, tacked to the pegboard. A small municipal field, 3 blocks off the quarry road, still marked though the park had been closed for years. The plat diagram showed 4 packed dirt bases and a storage shed the size of a 1-car garage. They drove there as the sun slid down. The field was a patch of weeds and caked dust, backstop bent and red with rust. The storage shed sagged, padlock long gone. Inside, the air smelled like oil and wet plywood. A dented batting tee lay on its side. On the back wall, chalk marks covered plywood in lines and loop space lines, tiny stick players, a small square home plate drawn over and over until the wood turned white. In the corner, under a tarp, they found a nest of blankets, a metal cup, a short length of rope, and a stack of cards bound with old elastic, baseball cards from 1996 and 1997. The top card showed a rookie pitcher mid-throw. On the back, in the same block letters as the quarry note, I was 9, then I wasn't. Riley stood very still while her throat climbed tight. Sam whispered, he came here to feel like himself, to keep the shape of a life. Something scraped outside, soft and quick. Riley lifted a hand. Both froze. A shadow slid past the warped slats, then the faintest footstep in dirt. Riley called, not loud but clear, Ethan. The shadow paused. A breath, then a whisper, dry as paper. Safe? Riley swallowed. Home, she said. The shadow vanished. A beat later, a new card slid under the door, face down. Riley crouched and picked it up with gloved fingers. On the back, a message in the same hand, the lines steadier now. Not yet. You're being watched too. Sam stepped to the doorway and swung it open. The field was empty, wind pushing weeds like slow waves. No one ran. No one stood. Riley stared at the card and felt the shift in the ground under all of it. This wasn't just a hunt for a missing boy. Someone had built net around their search, the same way someone once built a life-sized snare around Ethan's world. She reached for her phone. Another text arrived from a new number. Ask about Pike's friends and about the bridge cameras that night. Then, a second. Don't look down. She did anyway. A thin red dot danced across her chest and flicked away to the wall, then out the door and onto the weeds, like a laser pointer in the hand of a watcher with time to kill. Sam pulled her back behind the doorframe, scanning the tree line with a slow, controlled breath. The dot disappeared. The field turned still. Riley pressed the card flat on her palm to stop it from shaking. Okay, she said to the empty air, to the boy in the shadow, to the thing behind the trees. You want me to see? I'm seeing. Now show me the rest. Detective Riley Coates had grown used to the hum of sleepless nights, but by the time dawn bled gray over the rooftops, her mind felt stretched like wire about to snap. The baseball card with the message, not yet, you're being watched, too lay in an evidence bag on her desk, but she hadn't looked away from it for hours. She had pinned dozens of photos, reports, and scraps to her board, yet this one card carried more weight than all the rest. Someone alive Ethan, or someone who wanted her to believe it was Ethan, had been close enough to slide it under that shed door. Sam Keller entered the office with 2 coffees, dropping one in front of her. He looked warm but steady. I've been digging through the quarry caretaker's history, he said. Owen Pike, loner, sure, but he wasn't completely alone. Records show a joint lease on a storage unit in '98. Guess who the other name was? Riley straightened. Who? Jason Carnes? Local mechanic back then. Had priors petty theft, assault, nothing major. Disappeared from the records in the early 2000s. No death certificate, no forwarding address. Riley flipped through the dusty binder Sam slid over. Pike had a partner, she murmured. If Ethan was kept alive, maybe Pike wasn't the only one feeding him. Sam nodded. And if Carnes is still around, he's the one leaving chalk and cards. They drove out to the storage unit facility, a low stretch of corrugated doors off the highway. The manager was a balding man with nicotine-stained fingers. He squinted at their badges and pulled a record book. Unit 47, rented in Pike's name. Overdue fees stacked until the county cleared it years ago. We auctioned off the contents. Riley's heart sank, but the man added, I remember that one. No one bid on it. Junk inside. Smelled like mildew. He handed over a yellowed note. Unit sealed, contents destroyed. 2004. So much had rotted before anyone thought to ask. Still, the name Jason Carnes gave them a thread. Back at the precinct, Riley searched deeper. Old DMV photos. A younger man with a hard jaw, dark hair, and eyes that didn't want to look at the camera. His last address was a trailer on the edge of town. They drove there next. The trailer sat crooked on blocks, half hidden behind tall grass. The porch steps sagged. A busted car rested out front. Riley climbed the steps slowly, gun close but not drawn. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Still silence. Sam circled the trailer. A back window had been pried open, the screen bent. Inside, the air smelled like rot and damp paper. On the table sat a tin lunchbox with faded cartoon paint. Riley clicked it open with her pen. Inside were stacks of index cards, each scribbled with shaky block letters. She read the top one. DAY 100 quiet is safe. Day 101 Pike says look down when cars. Day 102 stay. Her throat went dry. Ethan's writing. The same hand from the quarry scrap. Sam held up a cracked photo frame found near the bed. It showed Pike and Carnes standing side by side in front of a pickup, neither smiling. The back had scrawled words. Keep 'em quiet. They bagged everything. As they loaded the trunk, Riley's phone buzzed. Unknown number again. This time, a video file. She pressed play. The shaky camera showed the inside of the same trailer, filmed just days ago. In the corner of the frame, a man sat hunched, hoodie pulled low. Thin arms, pale hands. On the floor near him, baseball cards scattered like breadcrumbs. The man looked up at the camera only for a second, and Riley's stomach turned. The face was older, gaunt, eyes too hollow, but the bone structure, the jaw, the nose matched Ethan Delaney's school photo. The video ended abruptly. Sam cursed under his breath. That's not staged? That's him. Riley exhaled slowly. Or someone wants us to believe it's him. They drove back to town in silence, the weight of the video pressing down on them. At the precinct, Riley spread the lunchbox cards across the evidence table. Each was numbered like a diary, tracking time in hundreds of days. Day 732, I'm not Ethan anymore. Day 740, the dark is safer. These aren't just notes, she said. They're records of captivity. Years of it. Sam leaned against the wall, arms crossed. If Pike died in 2003, then Carnes must have kept going, which means Ethan could still be alive, Riley said, voice steady even as her chest tightened. Somewhere close. That night, Riley sat outside the Delaney house, the place Mark and Ethan had lived before it all. Another family owned it now, curtains glowing with warm lamplight. Kids' bikes leaned on the porch. She imagined Ethan, 14, lanky, awkward, probably trying to look older than he was. A movement caught her eye. Across the street, a man stood under a lamppost, watching the house. Hoodie up, hands in pockets. When Riley stepped from the car, he turned and walked quickly into the shadows. She followed, heart hammering, but by the time she reached the corner, he was gone. On the ground where he had stood lay a single baseball card. She bent, picked it up. On the back, scrawled in ink, "I was here too." Her phone buzzed instantly. Another message. "Bridge. Midnight. Come alone." Riley stared at the words glowing on her screen. Bridge had haunted this case for 25 years. The same place the SUV had been found. The same place where all the whispers began. Now it was calling her back. She looked at the dark street, the empty lamppost, the warm house that no longer belonged to Ethan. Her pulse drummed in her ears. She whispered into the night, "All right then, midnight." Midnight put a thin silver edge on the river and turned the old truss bridge into a black-ribbed cage over moving dark. Detective Riley Coates parked 2 curves away, killed her lights, and walked the last 100 yards with her pulse in her throat. Wind slid off the water and cut through her jacket. Her phone stayed black in her pocket. She had told no one she was coming. She had not needed to. Sam would come anyway. He knew her too well. But for now, it was just the river, the steel, and the memory of an SUV idling here, 25 years ago, with a warm thermos and a backpack, and no people at all. She stepped onto the bridge. Every footfall answered with a hollow metallic note. Halfway to the center, she saw it. A small square on the asphalt, taped down with blue painter's tape, just big enough for a baseball card. She crouched, heart hammering. On the back in block letters, "Don't stand in the light." As she read it, a cold red dot bit the rail at her knee, then skittered to the deck and slid past her boot. Riley moved fast into shadow, spine pressed to steel. The laser winked out. Wind and water came back into focus. A voice came from the dark beneath the span. Not loud, not whisper, just there. "You came alone." She did not look over the rail. She spoke to the air. "You asked me to." Silence. Then, closer, from the lattice of steel, "You're not alone." A second shape detached from shadow at the far end. Tall. A man in a hood, rifle low but ready. He moved with the easy roll of someone who had walked this steel 1,000 times. Riley felt a tight, cold focus move into her hands and feet. "Jason Carnes," she said, and the name tasted like old oil and rot. The hooded man did not answer. The rifle climbed a hair. Another sound clanged under the bridge. A quick 3 taps on metal, then 1. A code. The hooded man flinched and pivoted toward the sound. "Stay back," he called into the dark. "No more games." Riley used the angle. She slid along the girder toward the old maintenance ladder where rust had eaten the paint to bone. "I know your name," she said. "I know Pike's name. I know the storage unit. I know the cards. You kept him after Pike died. You fed him. You hid him. You used him." The man's voice was flat. "You have no idea what I did." "Then tell me," Riley said. "Put the gun down and use words." The red dot found her hip, then jumped to the railing again, then vanished. Somewhere under the bridge, in the belly of the truss, something moved quick and sure, like a fox that had learned every rung and bolt in the dark. Riley put a palm to cold steel and leaned over just enough to see understructure and shadow. A face was there for a heartbeat, pale, eyes too big, hair damp with mist. Ethan. He lifted a finger to his lips and pointed downriver, at the rock abutment where the bridge met the bank. Then he was gone, a ghost folding into iron. "This ends tonight," the rifleman said, and now his voice had heat. "No more chalk. No more cards. No more midnight calls. You want the truth, detective? It was never about your boy. It was about his father." Riley kept breathing slow. "Mark Delaney," the gunman snorted. "Dentist, coach, good man on Sundays." He thought he could file complaints and stay clean. He thought he could tell the wrong person no. Another clatter under the deck. The rifle swung down and barked once, muzzle flash splashing light on black water. A scream of metal answered, not flesh. The shot had hit steel. Riley moved as the report cracked and died. She ran for the abutment, boots drumming, lungs biting air. Behind her another shot cracked, then a third, and chips leapt off concrete by her heel. At the far end, blue strobes splashed a low wash of color on trees that should have been empty. Sam. He had not stayed away. A fourth shot bit the night. Sam's reply snapped back. 2 clean reports, then quiet. Police! He shouted. Drop it, Carnes! The hooded man did not drop anything. He dove for the lattice and vanished into the iron jaw like he had been born in it. Riley skidded to the abutment. A narrow service shelf ran along the base, slick with spray. Below it, a maintenance crawlspace badged with a rusted padlock. The lock hung broken. Chalk marks dotted the concrete like constellations. A tiny diamond. An arrow. A door. She slipped inside and knew at once this was where Ethan had hidden when the river was loud and the world was too much. It was a tunnel, waist-high, ribbed with old rebar, dry only because the river had been kind this week. Her light found a cache, a tin can with a tea candle, a plastic cup, a handful of breadcrumbs gone to stone, and a Ziploc bag with a VHS tape wrapped in 2 layers of grocery bag and duct tape. On it, in the same block letters, a date, October 17th, 99. Cam 2. Her throat tightened. Bridge camera. The ones the file said produced nothing because the power had glitched. She slid the tape into her jacket and crawled back out into river cold. Riley. Sam's voice came from the center span. He's moving under you. Watch your left. She cut right. A pale shape flashed past a grate, and then a hand caught her sleeve and yanked. She almost swung, then stopped. Ethan. He was inches away, eyes wild and lucid at once, jaw tight. Up close, he looked both older and younger than his years, like time had asked too much and then given some back. He pointed at the tape pushing up against her jacket and tapped it twice with a trembling finger. Then he put his hand flat to his chest and shook his head hard. Not me. He pointed up toward the deck, then drew a square in the air like a screen, then mimed cutting a wire. He made a circle with his thumb and finger, and then drew a slash through it. Camera. Off. Not accident. Someone had killed the feed that night on purpose. Ethan spread his fingers like a fan and tugged them into a fist. Many turned into one. Then he traced a bad shape on his chest and jabbed 2 fingers at the bridge rail. Law. Here. Riley felt a dull, cold settle in her gut. Deputy, she said. Which one? Ethan glanced up like the name lived on the steel, not in his mouth. He touched his tongue to his teeth as if tasting a letter. Then he wrote with his finger on damp concrete. C paused. T. His hand shook. He made 3 more strokes. O.K.E.S. Stokes. The old file had a Stokes all over it. Deputy Brett Stokes, the first on scene in 1999, the same man who had signed off on camera failure reports, and later retired with a pension and a paper-thin hero story about the river almost taking him during a search dive that he never made. Ethan grabbed Riley's wrist and pressed it once hard, a human stamp for trust this, then pushed her back toward the light. He vanished again into iron. Above, boots slammed steel. Sam called, "He's on the south catwalk." A shot cracked. A spark shower fell through the lattice and hissed into the river. Riley climbed, muscles screaming, and burst onto the deck into blue strobe and breathless fear. Carnes ran along the outside beam like a rat on a fence, rifle in one hand, balance perfect. "Stop," Riley shouted. He did not. He reached the end, swung around a gusset plate, and was gone, dropping to the riprap and the shadows beyond. 2 more units screamed up the road, lights carving trees into blue and red. Sam reached Riley, eyes on her, on the tunnel, on the tape bulging at her jacket. She tapped it. Bridge cam. Dated. Bagged. Sam's brows went up and his jaw set. Then we figure out who signed it off. They cleared, called, logged. By 3 a.m., the bridge was quiet again, only crime scene tape sighing in the wind. Riley drove straight to the county AV lab. The tech on call was a night owl who looked like he lived on coffee and solder burns. He blinked at the tape like it was a fossil. "VHS?" he said. "That's a museum piece. Can you pull it?" Riley asked. "If the oxides haven't flaked," he said, already warming the deck and setting a head cleaner. He cut the duct tape, slid the cassette in, and hit play. Snow hissed. Horizontal crawl rolled. Then the picture locked with a brittle click. The bridge appeared in ghost gray, the camera's low light mode turning the world to a thin wash of silver. Timestamp? October 17th, 99, 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 13 seconds. The Delaney SUV idled center left, hazards blinking slow. The driver's door stood open. The cabin light glowed like a weak lantern. For a long, breathless moment, nothing moved. Then a figure stepped into frame from the far rail. Tall, broad in the shoulders. He wore a jacket with reflective piping on the chest. He held a flashlight in one hand and something else in the other that caught light in a clean, hard line. A knife. He leaned into the SUV, turned his head like he was speaking, then reached down and killed the hazards. The bridge went darker by half. He placed the knife on the rail with care and reached in again. A second figure tried to push past him, smaller, frantic. The tall man blocked, grabbed, and drove a hard, fast motion into the smaller shape. Riley's stomach dropped. Not the boy, the father, Mark. Mark doubled and fell out of frame. The tall man moved with calm, practiced efficiency. He leaned into the back seat, then stepped back holding a small object. A backpack strap. He slung it over one shoulder. He turned. The AV tech froze the frame and zoomed. The reflective piping formed a Y over the left pocket where a silver badge clip sat. The face was half shadow, half the flat calm of a man doing a dull task. Riley felt the name before she said it. Stokes. The tech pushed play. The tall man lifted the knife and wiped it on cloth. He picked up the thermos, took the lid off, sniffed it, and tossed it into the river. He looked straight up at the camera for 1/2 second, like checking a clock, then raised his hand and did something out of frame. The picture tore to snow. Cut feed. He knew where the power ran, the tech said, voice small. He killed the line. Riley stood very still, hands in fists she had not meant to make. He was first on scene in the report, Sam said behind her. He had been silent so long she had forgotten he was breathing next to her. Brett Stokes. He called it in. He wrote that the hazards were on when he arrived. He wrote the camera failed before he got there. He wrote the story we all swallowed, Riley said. The tech saved the digitized feed twice, then 3 times, then made a 4th copy because his hands were shaking and habits mattered. What now? He asked. Now we get a warrant, Riley said, voice calm only because it could not be anything else. We pick him up before dawn. They did not make it that far. At 4:12 a.m., as Riley and Sam stepped out of the lab with a drive in a bag that felt heavier than any evidence she had ever carried, her phone buzzed. A new number. A text. You're early. Come see how stories end. It was followed by an address. A ranch on the edge of town, 2 lots from the river trail. Stokes's place. Riley met Sam's eyes. "No sirens," she said. "No lights. He expects company." They rolled up dark and peeled the engine under a cottonwood that shed bark like paper. The house sat quiet, one porch light on, a moth battering itself against the bulb. Riley's boots found each step like she had measured them in a prior life. She knocked once and did not announce. The door swung inward on its own weight. Inside smelled like lemon cleaner and gun oil. In the living room, on a neat coffee table, sat a VHS case with Cam 2 sharpied on the spine. Next to it, a baseball card. Rookie pitcher, 1996. On the back, new ink in steady block letters. He chose the river for them. I chose the tape for you. A sound came from down the hall. Water running. A faucet? No. A tub. Riley moved, Sam on her right, weapons low. "Stokes." She called. "Sheriff's office." No answer. The bathroom door was ajar. Steam curled from the gap. Riley pushed it open with the back of her wrist. The tub was full. The man inside was large, face up, eyes open, blue around the lips. A zip tie bit into one wrist. On his chest sat a badge. Brett Stokes on the tile, written in chalk in a child's hand, because a child's hand had been the only hand that kept record for 25 years. Not a hero. Riley stood in steam and quiet and felt the whole town rotate a degree. Sam killed the water with one turn and looked at her. "This wasn't rage," he said, voice flat. This was a verdict. Riley's phone buzzed again. One more text. No address this time. Just 4 words. "You were not late." She stared at the chalk. She thought of tallies on wood, of a boy who had turned days into numbers because numbers did not lie. She thought of a bridge camera that had seen what a badge had done, and a child had hidden and saved because adults had not. She thought of a man in a hood with a rifle still out there. And she thought of the hand that had written "not a hero" and "you were not late," patient enough to wait under steel until the right eyes came to read. "Ethan," she said into the steam. "I see you?" And for a second she swore. She heard the faintest knock in return. 3 on metal. Then 1, like a pulse that had finally found an answer. The steam hadn't even cleared from Stokes's bathroom before the house filled with people who wore badges and careful faces. Riley and Sam stepped back, letting crime scene do its slow, holy work. Photos, swabs, bagged chalk. The coroner called. Time and began the quiet ritual of lifting a body that had lied for a living. The captain arrived bleary-eyed. The DA with a raincoat over gym clothes, internal affairs right behind them with pens already out. Riley gave them the short version bridge tape, timestamp, Stokes on camera with a knife, feed cut, text that led them here. The tub, the badge, the chalk words. She did not add the part where she felt like the room itself had been waiting to say, "Enough." Ia pushed hard. Who else knew about the tape? Did you call it in before you drove here? Why no uniform backup? Riley kept her voice even. Because the person who sent the address warned me not to bring sirens. And because if we'd come loud, we'd be looking at a burned house and a vanished suspect. The DA stared at the digitized footage on the tablet and swore under his breath. "This alone is a career-ending meteor," he said. "With a corpse in his own tub, it's a crater." The captain cut in. Who killed him? Riley looked at the chalk. The words say verdict. The method says quiet. It wasn't rage. Ia leaned in. "Detective, are you saying the boy did this?" Riley met the man's eyes. "I'm saying boy isn't the right word anymore." By mid-morning, the tape was mirrored to 3 servers, logged under seal, and walked to a judge for emergency warrants. Stokes's phone showed calls to a prepaid number the last 3 nights. The carrier gave them tower hits that traced a crescent around the river and the quarry. Sam ran the pings through a map. "Our ghost is moving in a loop," he said, staying near water, staying near steel. Riley's phone buzzed again. No blocked number this time, still unknown. But the text had no threats, no riddles. Just 4 numbers. 4927831 and a baseball emoji. Sam peered over her shoulder. Stats? Riley's mind clicked. 49 wins, 27 losses, 8 saves, 31 complete games. Those were old numbers, dead era. She thought of the Little League photo on Ethan's school wall, the faded banner in the gym, a team name. Rangers, she said, then shook her head. Too obvious. Then she saw it. A map on the precinct wall with grid overlays numbered 1 to 50 east-west, 1 to 50 north-south. She overlaid in her mind 49 across, 27 up, then 8 across, 31 up. 2 points made a line. The line ran straight through the old rail spur west of the quarry, the place the caretaker used to haul diesel drums in the 90s. "He's giving us a path," Riley murmured. From the bridge to the spur, they went without lights, 2 cars and a drone team that launched from the service road. The spur cut the trees like a scar, gravel half-eaten by grass. The drone fed back a jittery wash of green and heat. Sam pointed. There, heat signature. Small structure. They moved in on foot through brush that snagged at cuffs, air sharp with sap and rust. The building was a tool shed that had lost a roof corner and gained 1,000 spiders. Inside were signs of life stripped to bare function. A sleeping pad, a coffee can stove, a rain barrel, a stack of canned peaches, a tin of chalk. On the wall, tally marks rose in neat columns and then stopped. Beneath them someone had written, in slower, steadier hand than the old cards, nitrogen monoxide, more counting. On the floor, arranged like a grid, were baseball cards. Not random 4 in a line, then a break, and 4 more. Riley knelt and felt the pattern in her bones. Each row matched a date from the old Delaney file, the week after the disappearance. The week Pike renewed the caretaker contract, the day Stokes wrote the camera failure memo. The cards formed arrows that pointed to a plastic tub tucked under a shelf. Inside lay a spiral notebook wrapped in plastic and a second VHS cassette labeled in the same block print as the bridge tape. Police audio October 17th, 99 CH2. Back at AV, the tech threaded the tape and layered it over the digitized video. He split channels, filtered hiss, and turned noise into words. The radio traffic from that night crawled like a bad dream. A bored deputy calling out a traffic stop, a dispatcher asking about a noise complaint, Stokes' calm voice breaking in, checking the bridge. Possible 10 to 57. Copy. The picture showed him already at the SUV. On the second audio channel, lower, barely there, another voice whispered through the frame, like it had been captured by accident from a shoulder mic too near a mouth. Kill the flashers. Kill the cow. Move the kid. A third voice answered, wet with fear mark. Please, please. He's just a... The thud came next, dull and final. The tech paused. No one spoke. Then he scrubbed forward. After the feed cut, the audio kept rolling a few seconds. Tires on gravel. A door slam. A chain clink like a loose hook on a hitch. Riley looked at Sam. Tow truck. Sam nodded. Carnes, he said. The mechanic. The man who walked steel like a balance beam. They pulled old business registrations and found that Jason Carnes had owned a small wrecker for 4 years starting in 1998. The DMV picture showed the same hard jaw, older eyes. With a warrant, they hit the last listed yard, a weedy lot behind a closed repair shop. The wrecker was gone, sold off a decade ago, but the office still stank of oil and dust. In a desk drawer, Under invoices for tires and brake pads, Riley found a shoebox packed with Polaroids. Most were junk cars, scrappers, bar nights. At the bottom, 3 that mattered. One showed the bridge, night, hazard lights off. Another showed a boy's hand holding a card, the edge of a chalk mark on concrete behind it. The third was a shot of a corkboard loaded with newspaper clippings about the Delaney case and a printed email header that made Riley's stomach turn. From B. Stokes at county.gov. G. Cameras with the body cut away. They were partners, Sam said quietly. Stokes handled the story. Carnes handled the moving. The DA met them in the squad room, jaw tight. We charge Carnes with murder for Mark and a conspiracy to abduct Ethan, he said. We reopen every missing persons case that touched Stokes's desk. We call the feds. We tear the sheriff's office down to the studs if we have to. The captain nodded, already tired in the face and wide in the eyes. Do it, Ia tried, to reassert control, asking for statements. Wanting to talk about chain of custody like chain of duty wasn't the bleeding thing on the floor. Riley signed where she had to, and then stepped away long enough to breathe. Outside, the sky was a hard, bright blue that felt disrespectful. Her phone buzzed again, a video this time. She stepped into the empty stairwell and pressed play. The camera saw through a crack in corrugated metal. In the frame, Carnes stood in a clearing, rifle slung, talking to someone out of sight. His voice was low, but the mic found it. You don't get to write the ending, he said. You don't get to judge me. A second voice answered, softer, rasped by years of silence, but clear as a bell in Riley's head. Ethan, you didn't keep me. You kept me small. I grew anyway. The image shook, a scramble of feet, a clatter. The phone flashed coordinates. A timestamp. Now. Riley ran. Sam met her at the lot without a question. They rolled hard for the state land north of the spur, tires chewing dust. The point dropped them at a cut in the trees that fell to a creek. They went down on foot, rifles low, breaths quiet. In a stand of poplar, chalk stars dotted the trunks. 3, then 1. The code that had knocked under steel. Riley slowed. Ethan, she called, not loud. It's me. A shape eased out from behind a trunk 10 yards ahead. Hood down, gaunt face, eyes too old. He held nothing. His hands were open, palms out. Behind him, 20 yards back, Carnes stepped into view, rifle up, cheek to stock. Move and I'll drop you, he told Ethan, but it was meant for Riley. Sam shifted, a clean line on Carnes's flank. Jason, Riley said, steady as a metronome. We have the tapes. We have your tow records. We have your emails with Stokes. It's over. Carnes's mouth twitched. You don't know how to count to over. He pivoted an inch. Enough to show intent. Sam fired once. The round took Carnes high in the shoulder, and the rifle skittered. He roared and dove sideways. Ethan did not run. He stood rooted, as if running was a shape his body had carved too many times to try again. Riley went to him first, hands visible. You're not alone, she said. He nodded once, eyes on her, not the gun, not the trees. I know, he said, voice raw. You came. Backup thundered in from the road. Carnes bled and cursed, and then stopped sounding like anything human as they cuffed him. He stared at Ethan with a hate so empty it looked like hunger. Riley put herself between them and felt a small, impossible calm settle in her chest. Not victory, not yet, but a turn. Back at the station, the booking lights felt too bright. The DA took the tapes like relics. Ia asked for blood pressure readings like that. Could equal scales balanced? The captain squeezed Riley's shoulder once, the closest thing to praise a tired leader had left. Sam dropped into the chair across from her and blew out a breath that had been living in his ribs all day. "You good?" he asked. Riley stared at her phone. At the last text Ethan had sent, "You were not late," and she let herself answer the question with a truth that surprised her. For the first time, she said, maybe, that night, before sleep could try to fail her again, she drove to the bridge. She stood where the card had been taped and looked over at the water that had been made to carry too much. Wind cut cold off the river. Somewhere under steel, a fox's quick feet ticked across old bolts. In the rail's rust, faint but new, she saw chalk. A small diamond and an arrow pointed away from the drop and toward the land. She smiled, small and fierce. Messages don't stop when the camera does. In the dark, she knocked on the railing 3 times, and then once, a code returned, an answer given, a promise laid like tape over a wound so it could knit. The county jail was quieter than Riley expected. Concrete swallowed sound, and Carnes's heavy chains rattled only when he shifted in his seat across the steel table. His shoulder was bandaged from the gunshot, but his eyes burned with the kind of anger that never cooled. Riley sat across from him, Sam at her side, both of them trying to read the man who had stolen so many years from a boy. "You think you won," Carnes muttered, voice gravelly. "You think dragging me in here makes you the hero?" Riley didn't flinch. "You're not the story anymore. Ethan is." At the mention of the name, Carnes leaned forward, cuffs clanking. "He's nothing without me. Nothing. He wouldn't breathe if I hadn't taught him how to keep quiet." Sam's fists tightened, but Riley kept her eyes on Carnes. "You didn't keep him. You broke him. And he's still standing." Carnes smirked. "Standing where? In the shadows? That's all he'll ever know. Shadows." He leaned back, the smirk fading into something darker. "You'll see. You'll all see. The boy doesn't belong in your world anymore." The interview ended with more silence than words. They left Carnes to stew in his cell, but Riley couldn't shake the echo of his tone. He wasn't bluffing. He was convinced Ethan had become something other than a victim. Back at the precinct, a deputy met them at the door. "Detective Coates, something came in for you." On her desk sat a small padded envelope, no return address. She slid it open carefully. Inside lay a Polaroid photo, a clearing in the woods, moonlight slanting through bare branches. In the center stood Ethan Gaunt, hood down, staring straight at the camera. On the back of the photo, written in neat block letters, "Not lost, choosing." Sam exhaled hard. He's playing his own game now. Riley studied the photo. Ethan's eyes were hollow, but there was intent in them, a sharpness that hadn't been there before. He wasn't running in panic anymore. He was leading trails, making choices. Forensics scanned the envelope, but found no prints. The ink on the Polaroid matched the baseball card notes. The paper stock was old, expired film from the early 2000s. Whoever had sent it had been saving it for years. That night, Riley drove out to the quarry again. The woods pressed close, shadows deep between the trees. She parked at the edge and waited, headlights off, windows cracked. For a long time, nothing moved. Then she saw a chalk on a tree trunk, fresh and bright against the bark. A diamond, then an arrow pointing deeper into the forest. She followed on foot, flashlight low, heart steady. Each few yards, another mark. Arrows, tally marks, circles. A breadcrumb trail. Finally, she reached a clearing where the ground was churned, soil disturbed. Kneeling, she brushed away leaves. Beneath was a rusted lunchbox. Inside lay scraps of paper torn from a notebook dot. The writing was uneven, frantic. Day 5,000 I watched. Day 5,200, I chose silence. Day 5,300, I am still here. Day 6,000 I walk free, but I am not free. Riley swallowed hard. These weren't messages for Pike or Carnes. They were journals Ethan had written to himself. Her phone buzzed in the quiet clearing. A text, no number. You see me now. She spun, scanning the trees. For a second, she saw a figure between the trunks, thin, pale, motionless. But when she raised her light, it was gone. Only the echo of footsteps and leaves remained. Back at the precinct, Sam traced the timeline. If he's been writing for years, there could be dozens of these caches. Every trail, every camp. He's mapped his own captivity. Riley nodded slowly. And now he's mapping us. The next day, news broke. A hiker had found bones in a shallow grave near the quarry fence. Forensics confirmed it wasn't Mark, and it wasn't Pike. It was another boy, missing since 1994. His name was Daniel Hughes. He'd vanished walking home from school. A case that had gone cold. The revelation hit the town like a storm. Headlines screamed about multiple victims, secret burials, a caretaker turned captor. Riley knew it meant more than history. Ethan hadn't just been a victim, he'd lived among ghosts, aware or not that he wasn't the first. That evening, Riley returned to the bridge alone. The river moved black beneath her, the steel beams groaning in the cold wind. She placed the Polaroid on the railing and whispered, "I see you, Ethan. I know you're here." For a moment, there was nothing. Then, faint but real, a knock echoed from the underside of the bridge. 1, 2. Pause. 1. The same code from the quarry. Riley's breath caught. He was still close, still listening. When she returned to her car, another Polaroid waited under the wiper. This one showed the bridge from the waterline, as if shot from beneath. On the back, "Don't bring them, just you." Riley sat behind the wheel, photo trembling in her hands. Ethan wasn't just leaving signs now. He was inviting her into his world. The line between hunter and hunted had blurred long ago, but now Riley understood. The boy who had vanished in 1999 was alive. Broken, haunted, but alive. And he wanted her to see the truth the way he saw it alone. In the dark, where the river whispered secrets no one else had ever heard. She whispered to the empty car, "All right, Ethan, I'll come." The night air on County Road 7 was colder than it should have been for spring. Riley parked her car at the bridge, headlights cutting through the mist that crawled low over the river. She held the Polaroid in her hand, the one Ethan had left on her windshield. Its words burned into her thoughts. "Don't bring them, just you." Sam had argued. The captain had forbidden it. But Riley knew Ethan would vanish if he sensed anyone else near. Some ghosts only showed themselves when called by one name alone. She stepped onto the bridge, boots ringing against steel. The river below moved black and restless. For a long minute, nothing stirred but the wind. Then she heard it a single knock beneath the railing. 1, 2. Pause. 1. The same code. Riley leaned over, flashlight angled low. "Ethan," she called softly. "It's me." "I came." From the shadows under the bridge, a figure moved. Slowly, a man climbed up from the embankment, thin, hood down, face pale in the moonlight. It was him, Ethan Delaney, no longer a boy, but not fully grown in the way time usually shapes people. His eyes carried 25 years of silence. "You kept looking," he said, voice raw, almost unused. Riley nodded, careful not to move too quickly. "I never stopped." He studied her with a gaze that cut deeper than questions. "They all stopped. Sheriff, teachers, my neighbors. Even God stopped." "Why didn't you?" "Because you're not lost," Riley answered. "You were taken, and you deserve to come home." A bitter half-smile flickered across his lips. "Home? You think that house is there?" You think a boy can come back after scratching days into walls until his hand bled? Riley's chest tightened. She took one step closer. You survived. That means you get to choose what comes next. Not Carnes. Not Pike. You. Ethan's eyes darted to the river, the current snarling beneath. He told me the water takes everything. That's what I believed for years. That I was meant to go under. But I didn't. His voice cracked, low and sharp. Do you know what it feels like to keep breathing when you're not supposed to? Yes, Riley whispered. It feels like punishment. But it's not. It's proof you're stronger than him. For a moment, Ethan wavered, shoulders trembling. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a battered notebook, edges frayed from years of damp. He held it out. Read it, every page. Then you'll know. Riley took the notebook carefully, feeling its weight like a living thing. On the cover, scratched into the cardboard, were the words, "Not lost, kept." When she looked back up, Ethan had stepped onto the railing. Her heart seized. Ethan, no. He held her gaze, not with despair, but with strange, steady resolve. I'm not jumping. Not tonight. I just wanted to feel what choice was. His eyes softened, almost boyish for an instant. Thank you for seeing me. Then, just as quickly, he dropped back to the pavement. His breath came hard, his frame shaking. Riley steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. He didn't pull away Dot in the distance. Sirens rose Sam and the others, unable to stay back. Ethan's eyes darted toward the sound. Fear shadowed his face again. They'll try to lock me away. Call me broken. I won't go back to walls. Riley tightened her grip gently. No walls. Not this time. Just help. Just people who won't stop. The sirens grew louder. Ethan's gaze lingered on her one last time, searching for a promise he wanted to believe. Finally, he nodded faintly. When the cruisers rolled up, lights strobing blue and red across the steel, Ethan stayed where he was beside Riley. Later, as medics checked him and cameras flashed from news vans at the road's edge, Riley stood apart, the notebook pressed to her chest. She hadn't read it yet, not fully, but she knew the story wasn't over. Some chapters had been carved in chalk and tally marks. Some had been written in silence and scars. But now, for the first time in 25 years, Ethan Delaney's story was his to tell. And Riley swore she would make sure the world finally listened.